Hi, and good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. And you're very welcome, as always, to our Always Getting Better webinar. And this, of course, is all based on our latest release to the platform, the Intrepid release for July, which landed seamlessly once again, within your organization on Monday morning of this week. So today's webinar, obviously there are some great highlights, but in particular around the e-invoicing, which I'm sure you're all very eager to hear about and find out about, and of course to see it all in action within the platform itself. As always, this session is recorded for those that cannot attend, or if you've got colleagues out there that want to view and review it again, absolutely the recording will be made available, and we will also have it posted up on our website once we have taken it down. So without further ado, I'm actually going to stop sharing my camera here and obviously just focus in on the presentation. And of course, as always, there will be a live demonstration. So let me just start by sharing my presentation with you, and let's just remind ourselves of what it is that we've been able to deliver to you, as I've said, seamlessly on Monday morning as part of the Intrepid release for July. So starting off with what today's presentation will be about, and of course, primarily, we're going to look at e-invoicing. So we'll focus in on what e-invoicing actually is, what governments are mandating, and what those timelines, of course, will look like as we go into the coming years. And of course, how Enterprise gets you ready from today. You can start sending those invoices that are needed within your business-to-business domestic sales, for example. We will also hone in on some of the enhancements we've made around invoice automation. And again, we're just working smarter to capture that information, but also to update information as it's captured when the invoices are being scanned into the system, to improve matching those directly to your suppliers, and of course that you can continue on and approve those through the system. So lots of little key improvements there around the invoice automation, and we'll take care of those as well during the presentation. And of course, everything else. As always, if you've attended these monthly webinars, I always talk about all of the other nuggets of value that are added to the system every month. And of course, this month is of no exception. There are other smaller improvements that obviously make life that much easier for somebody and everybody out there, particularly around audit, being able to see who entered and added transactions to the system. So there's lots for you to view and review, and of course we'll take care of that, as we always do, as part of the live demonstration. So the live demo, we'll see it all in action. So the part that you've been waiting on, e-invoicing. So e-invoicing has landed, and basically what that means for you as an enterprise user is that from today you can start utilizing and sending out your e-invoices to your PEPAL suppliers within your network and seamlessly deliver those, have them validated, and of course, above all else, that they are compliant and obviously compliant within the structured data that's required for the EU standards. So a typical thing here regarding invoicing, what it is, and of course, more importantly, what it's not. And of course, what e-invoicing is definitely not is a PDF attached to an email, a scanned or photographed paper invoice, Word or Excel invoice, or anything that a person has to read potentially or retype into the system, as we all know. So the e-invoice, of course, is pure automation from one system to another. For compliancy, of course, it's structured data to the EU standard. It's delivered over a secure network, which is the PEPAL delivery system. Validated automatically on arrival, and of course, more importantly, post straight into the buyer's system. So this first phase of the delivery of the invoicing that we've done is you'll be able to send your invoices from business to business, particularly for your your domestic sales, which is the initial requirement, particularly within Ireland. That's going to be required before the end of 2027. So let me just show you in terms of the rollout and government expectations and what's been asked of all businesses across all markets, obviously, and just to give you a little bit of a timeline here. So for tax purposes, to bring a more structured e-invoicing that closes out the VAT gaps. There are certain phases that have been being introduced across various markets, and as I've said about Ireland, so phase 1 needs to be in place by November 2028. So that is, all large corporates must issue e-invoices for domestic business to business. Every Irish business must be able to receive them. And then you can see the rollout there for the United Kingdom. By April 2029, e-invoicing will be mandatory for all VAT invoices exchanged via the PEPAL network. Phase 2 then for Ireland by November 2029 extends to all VAT registered businesses trading, obviously business to business, within the EU. And then of course you can see there the remainder of the EU by 2030. Structured e-invoicing for everybody, cross-border EU, business to business trade, all has to be taken care of electronically. So the bottom line is, as we saw on the previous slide, is that PDFs and paper will not satisfy this compliancy. So everybody will have to be compliant within those timelines. The great news is that we don't have to wait until 2028 when Ireland needs to have the first phase in place. Preparation really starts now, and as I've said, that's why we've brought you in particular being able to send invoices directly from Enterpryze, that you can implement that from today. There are other localizations as well that we're able to accommodate from today. So we've got Ireland, Portugal, Malaysia and Singapore, of course, as well, in relation to the PEPAL network, being able to send e-invoices from today from your organization. So it's time to take action, and it's time to get ready and start utilizing e-invoicing within your platform. So what we've built, obviously, as I've said so far, is we've built the send part of it. So that's already available. Issue fully compliant, structured e-invoices, and that's all done directly through the same sales flow. So that is, your normal sales flow might be quote to order or simply order to delivery to invoice. And once you've reached the invoice stage, if the organization is fully compliant for the PEPAL network and with the relevant ID for the business that you're dealing with, that would be the customer, for example, in your sales flow, the e-invoice will seamlessly send through the PEPAL network and it will be received on the other end. We will, of course, as well have a rollout of the receiving part, which is where you take your supplier e-invoices and arrive directly into your purchasing to validate and, of course, ready to approve. So no more inboxes, no more rekeying. So that is something that we will be rolling out within development. So that is something that we will keep you posted on as it comes through the roadmap. And of course, the bottom line here is fully compliance. The bottom line here is that it aligns to the standard invoices delivered over the PEPAL network, the network that Ireland and the UK are building their mandates on. So it's a trusted source and a trusted delivery system within the PEPAL network. So one system, invoice it out, invoice it in, and then you're completely covered with the PEPAL network. Next up, just to, again, confirm what we've done in relation to our invoice automation piece. As you know, with invoice automation, and this is on the procurement side for the purchase invoices as they stand, we scan them in via OCR, and then you're able to review and approve those invoices as they come through the system. So we've gotten smarter again around the capture of those invoices. In particular, we've listened to some of the issues that you've had when capturing some of those scanned invoice details, particularly around matching off the supplier, for example, where you may have had a missing VAT ID against your supplier record. We can now identify if the invoice has a VAT ID, we also capture that in as part of the OCR scan. But in addition to that, we will also update your supplier master record in Enterprise. So the next scan won't even come into question. There won't even be a check again on that VAT ID. It will now always be on the master record for the next scan and all the rest to follow. We've also done some lovely things around the service invoicing, being able to specify for each supplier what type of invoice it is that they scan. Is it always an item invoice that they send you, or is it only ever a service invoice? Now you can determine that against your supplier record to begin with, and then scan in your invoice. And a couple of nice little things we've added there as well is that when you edit that service invoice, you will be directly able to amend the lines on screen without actually having to click on edit and then change them. So for example, you want to quickly change the GL account for that particular service that's coming through, or update the VAT code, you can do it directly on the line. And another great value add that we've added to that as well is that when you save that service invoice, we will also give you the opportunity to add that service as a service item. And again, that's key for matching going forward. The next time the supplier sends similar invoice with the similar service, it will identify the item, the supplier, and the scanning is seamless then through the system. So all of the time machine learning and learning what it is the supplier has set up already against it and what items that supplier generally sends you or invoices you for services, for example, or even for items. So lots of great things down there around matching, and another key piece around auto matching as well as those related transactions. So whether that be a related purchase order or related delivery, particularly around foreign suppliers, that you'll be able to see the foreign currency amount for the related documents as they come through. So just making it easier again for you to match up and relate the right documents at the right time. As always, there's lots more as well with every update that we do every month. So lots of things, of course, that we always try to improve upon, of course, performance, and that's, of course, loading large lists of data and reporting. And when it comes to reporting and the grids themselves, we've introduced quite a bit in the last couple of releases around auditing, making auditing better, being able to identify when a document was created, for example. So this month, we're giving you who actually created the document, so the created by column. So again, all around the audit and compliancy, being able to identify for a specific transaction type, how many were added, who added them, date in which they were created, for example, that you can see all of that information directly on the transaction without having to go any further. We've also just bettered our compliancy around creating that. So where there's differences, for example, on an incoming payment, and they create, for example, where you have a write-off on an incoming payment. So far to date, we've been writing off those differences, but without the correct VAT assigned or VAT analysed to those particular credit notes on the write-off. So now we've made sure that when you do a write-off with an incoming payment, for example, it will do the correct VAT analysis based on that difference. Again, around the permissions and administration side, that's always an improvement every single month. And usability, lots of things that we do around usability as well. Still lots more to come. This month in particular, we've improved upon the look of our warehouse menu, for example. Again, I'll show you that during the live demonstration. And we've also improved the activity screen. So when you go to add a new activity or edit an existing activity, we've made it look better. And really what we've done there is just brought it in line with the rest of the UI that we've improved throughout the system. If you've missed anything to date, anything that you've received an email over the last couple of weeks and you want to check out the full details, we have a blog on our website, and that's www.enterpryze.com. Click on resources and then click on blogs, and you will see the Intrepid blog there detailing all of the latest changes, and of course if you need access to any of the demonstrations. Or alternatively, as always, have a conversation with us. Reach out to your account manager and ask all the relevant questions. So without further ado, let's switch over to the live system and let's keep this moving on time for you. So we'll first quickly look at how we can send any invoice end to end. So this will just show you what it's like to set up the compliancy within the organization, just part of it, of course. It's important that you have a conversation with us ahead of time to let us know so that we can make sure your organization is fully compliant. And what we'll also do is look at the invoice automation piece, just a simple import of an invoice for service invoice to show you those key changes that I mentioned already. And if we have time, of course, as always, a quick tour of the smaller improvements that we have made. So if you just bear with me 1 second now, and I will stop sharing this screen for 1 second. So the first thing we have to look at in relation to being e-invoicing compliant is our tax codes that we have for our organization. So if we come in here to the settings and come in here to finance and banking, so what you have against your tax code table, all of your different tax codes that you've defined for your organization, obviously, are here. What we also have is a new column called e-invoice category. And this is where you have to assign the e-invoice category that aligns to that particular output tax code. And that's just to simply ensure that when the two systems talk, it identifies the domestic rates as opposed to maybe the zero rated VAT or exempt VAT codes that are coming through from one system to another. So very simply what we've done here against those VAT codes, you can edit the VAT, the VAT code line here and simply click on the drop down to select the type of e-invoice category that is applicable to that VAT code. So the first one there at the very top is simply just a domestic VAT rate for this particular localization. And you can see there, I'm going to just select standard percentage country dependent, which is the one that speaks for all domestic rates, for example. And then below that, you'll see I've also allocated one where you might potentially have zero rate, or in effect, you might have out of scope or exempt, again, depending on the localization. Next up, of course, is the master data for the actual company, the customer, the business that you are going to be invoicing. So if we look here at a business account, and of course, there's lots of things in order for a business to be compliant. You know, the company has to have all of the relevant information defined against them, and in particular around the billing addresses for that customer. That is, you know, the right city, the right zip code, the formats have to be correct, the counties, the countries, etc. Just some of the standards that would be required from one system to another. But primarily what we need to ensure here as well for e-invoicing and particularly for PEPAL is to ensure that we have the e-invoice ID. And that's where that's stored here on your Finance and Taxes tab. So you simply click on Edit to make sure that you've populated the e-invoice ID for that particular business that you need to invoice. So let's see what happens next. So when we come into sales and we come into invoices, and for example, we kick off an invoice for this particular customer. So again, this is all part of your standard sales process flow. Maybe you've taken that from order to delivery and now going into invoice, for example. So let me just populate some of the fields that I know I'm going to need. And if I remember correctly, I do have some mandatory cost centers as well that I require at header level. So let me just OK those so we don't get those coming up. And of course, let's just assign an item to that invoice. It's got a value. I can update that and of course add my item. Now, very simply, what I can do is click on Save. We'll just ignore that. It's just for an intercompany purposes. And let's just complete the invoice. So the invoice has been added to the system and updated to the record for the customer as per normal. So how do we now identify that the PEPAL network has taken that invoice and is now transmitting that or processing that, for example? So what we've done here is we've added two new columns. Very simply, they are e-invoicing. So if you look here, e-invoice status and e-invoice. So let me just get that for you there. Just gone past them. So e-invoice status and e-invoice last updated. So you will see there the invoice that we've just added, 933, for the value of, it was the value of, no, there was a discount percentage on it because it's a gross price list. That's fine. You can see there that it says that it's processing. If I click here on the processing tab under the e-invoice status column, in fact, it's already reverted and told me now that it's transmitted. So I can see that the time as well has updated onto the invoice, and you can see exactly the time that it's been processed and transmitted through the system. In addition to that, of course, for other previous ones that may have failed for whatever reason, there's always something that will tell you why they failed, and in particular this account here is to do with the VAT category was not assigned to the customer account, and this one was simply because there was no e-invoicing ID defined in the first place, so it couldn't identify the customer for the PEPAL network. And of course, we've applied exactly the same principles and process to sending credit notes via the PEPAL network. Again, we've got an e-invoice status column and last updated column as well to update those transactions. So get on board and obviously do contact us to speak to us further about getting compliant and to start working on and start moving on using the e-invoicing. Perfect. So we're in purchasing here now at the moment. So we want to have a quick look at the purchase automation. So very quickly into purchasing, into invoice automation. And before we maybe jump in there, just let me give you a quick look at the supplier account. So I'm just going to go in here to our Acme Supplies. And on the account itself, we have an invoice automation tab. And this is where you can define, you can see here, default invoice type. So what normally comes in from this customer? Is it service invoices or is it item invoices? Or from this supplier, I should say. In addition to that, I want to show you that I've no VAT ID defined for my supplier. So it's going to make it a little bit harder maybe for it to match up that supplier unless I've previously brought those in or scanned the invoice in. So let's go into purchasing. Let's go into invoice automation. And very simply what we can do here is I'm going to click on upload. I'm going to bring across, I've got an invoice ready to go here. It's actually a service invoice. Let me just drag it in and I'm going to say save on that. And what you should see happen now on the invoice automation grid, we should see the invoice here, which is on the top line. So I'm just highlighting that for you there. We can also see that it's brought in and identified the VAT number that's on that scanned invoice. So let's drill in. There's just got one notice. That's fine. Let's just see missing related documents. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. It's normal. Let's quickly click on edit. And I want to show you a couple of things that you can do. So what we've done here is, let me just quickly update that there and save that. So we've got the supplier. We've got all of the information against the supplier. We've also got the PDF on view here. You can see there the PDF shows the VAT ID on the top right. So you can see that here. And if we come down then to the line details, you can see here the service item, but you can also see that we've exposed the account code field. So you can just simply start typing to find the account code that you want to post it to. And of course, the VAT code as well, you can identify that directly from the line. So there's no more having to scan across, click on edit. You can simply just select directly from there. And of course, if there were any related documents, they would show up on the list here as well. So I'm going to save this. So I've got the information updated and I should be able to now approve and calculate this invoice. Yes, I can. So let me do that. I want to show you what's going to happen next once we submit it. Let's do the submission. And once we submit, we should also get an option, if it hasn't already been added, to add that particular service item to your service item master details. Now in this particular instance, if I look at the service items, I've probably inadvertently used the same one, but that's okay. But you can see here under the service items, for example, that one was service intercompany item. It's already there, so I previously added it when I was doing a previous import of a service invoice. But the other nice thing now is that because we also imported that invoice with the VAT ID, if I go back to the supplier record, we should see on the Finance and Taxes tab, and yes, it has, it's updated the VAT ID for that supplier. There's also some other cool things it does in relation to matching a supplier for the first time. It will also, if you have a telephone number and the telephone number is on the invoice, it will look up part of the number, I think it's the first 6 numbers, to identify that supplier. So it will find other ways of matching that particular supplier as well. So just very quickly, I'll just quickly show you a couple of the other key things that we've also brought in this month before we finish out on the webinar. There's lots to check out. So a couple of the audit things that I mentioned already, and I think these are great. If you want to identify users that have added specific transactions, we have now added a new column which is created by. So you'll find that in your column chooser. You can see there I've already added that here. And of course, created date and time is another one. So I'm going to pop the two of those beside each other. So if you wanted to understand who created the document, when it was created. So we've rolled that out to all your sales and purchase transactions, and we've also brought it into the items as well. So if you wanted to identify, well, who added a new stock item, we've also brought that field in as well. So again, into actions, column chooser, and again, you can see there created by. So you can identify, you will be able to identify for new items, obviously these are older items, but for any new item that's created within the system, you'll be able to identify who created that item. There's one I did create this week, who created the item going forward. Another good thing that we've done here as well in relation to warehousing, we've extended the warehousing menu just to include all of those usable transactions for anybody that's working within warehousing and stock management, and you're managing picking and creating pick lists or working within the warehouse management system on the handheld. You can get access now as well on the web app to all of those commonly used transactions to manage your stock, such as your purchase orders, your goods receipts, your sales orders and your deliveries, back orders. Email and print will specifically allow you to email and print the deliveries. So lots of great things that you can get access to very fast within the warehousing menu. In addition to that, on the CRM, which is all around forecasting and budgeting, this was something that was introduced last month around forecasting quantities for stock for customers. But we've now extended that to include budget revenues, which basically means you can define revenue amounts against your customers, which you can see here on the grid. So divide that out across the year and then run the forecast report to see, well, how actually did the customer perform in terms of the actual versus the budget. And of course, if you're also looking at forecasted quantities for certain stock items, you can do a comparison across the board on all levels. So lots and lots of great key information. Let me just come back to you there that we've delivered this month. And as I've said, if you need to check out anything, check out our blog on www.enterpryze.com, click on resources and check out the Intrepid blog. And if you want to have a conversation around the e-invoicing, please reach out to your account manager and we'll only be too happy to help you out and get you started on your compliance journey. Thank you as always for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next Always Getting Better monthly webinar update. Thank you all and take care.